Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining our monthly Value Selling Associates webinar. My name is Doug Von Koenig, and I have the privilege of hosting today's webinar. And we're going to talk about why should anybody listen to us, meaning how do I improve my prospecting with a credibility introduction. To me, and our belief at Value Selling is that the world literally revolves around making sure we establish instant and fast credibility with all of the decision makers that we're going to be speaking with as we meet them in the sales cycle. So this is a signature part of our value selling process. Very excited to be sharing it with you today. And again, we believe that everything that goes on in a sales cycle starts with the credibility introduction. So you talk about credibility, that's how we establish trust. That's how we gain access to the senior executives, right? Why would they want to speak to us if we don't have something credible to say? And it gives us that believability and that trustworthiness so that they'll want to engage with us and let us begin a normal sales process for our products and services. At Value Selling, we also believe that we only get one chance to make a good first impression. We believe that the more senior the person is, the less time I have to make that good first impression, and that the amount of time I've actually got to do it is only 30 seconds when I first meet or reach out or contact that person. So everything we're going to talk about today is geared around how do I structure that 30-second credibility introduction so that they'll pay attention to it, gain their attention, and have them want to continue speaking with me, especially if I'm asking for that first appointment or trying to get them to do something for me. Very important that we be able to do that. And the hard part is we've only got 30 seconds. So it should be kind of interesting today to talk about how do we make sure that gets done and what do those executive ears want to hear in that first 30 seconds. And once we've done that and we've anchored our credibility introduction well enough, our 30-second version, and we've gained that first meeting, then we want to expand on that and actually anchor our credibility during the first meeting with them so that they'll want to continue talking with us and we come across as very credible. And we'll talk about, so the 30-second version is about prospecting, gaining access when I initially reach out to them, asking for that appointment. And then when I actually do meet them the first time, I want to take the time to do it a little bit more. I've got a little more time when I meet them in person, but I've got two areas that are very important to the sales cycle and helping accelerate it and helping you close it, anchored around making sure I do both of these things for the credibility introduction. And I've got 2 minutes to do the second one. So we'll talk about the content process, why I'm doing that. And the way we'll run the webinar is I'm going to take a look about every 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll try to answer questions there. And you'll hear me talk a little bit, too, that after we go through the credibility introductions, I'm going to make an offer to you that if you would like to download this webinar, which will be available in about an hour on our website, as all our webinars are, I will make sure that if you send me an email with your credibility introduction, I'd be more than happy on a complimentary basis to critique it, to tune it with you so that you've got a really well-crafted credibility introduction that you can leverage throughout your prospecting efforts. So what we're going to learn today is creating our own credibility introduction, how we adapt it to different types of clients, different types of verticals, and different types of markets. Everything we're talking about is as relevant to a sales professional as it is to a marketing professional. So if you're a marketing professional on the phone, great. If you're a sales professional, great. This will apply to both your worlds. And we'll talk about the differences that we can leverage it for sales versus marketing, but equally important. And we'll also talk about value selling best practices for leveraging your now finely tuned credibility introduction for effective prospecting. I'm not going to do an extended version of our prospecting process today. That's a separate webinar. but we've done one, I think, in the last 6 or 8 months. I know there's one archived on our website. And second part of the offer is this. If you find how we describe our prospecting process today to be of interest to you, I will also share, if you just send me an email, and I'll put my email address up a couple times, I will also share our prospecting deck with you and offer to just take you through it so that you understand the 7 steps and can leverage your freshly built credibility introduction into the process that we at ValueSelling actually use ourselves so we know it works. And that's pretty much what we're going to learn today. And again, I'll come back to questions every 10 or 15 minutes to see if we've got any. And if for any reason we're not able or we don't answer your question during the webinar today, I will reach out to you via email. We capture your email addresses as you join the webinar, and I will make sure that you get an answer. And again, if you think of one later on that you didn't ask during the session, feel free to email me, and I will do my best to answer it for you. Again, all of that on a complimentary basis. And again, questions fire at will, so we covered that. So this is my email address, and again, I'm offering to do a complimentary review of your personal credibility introduction with you, as well as I mentioned a second ago, I will send you the prospecting deck that takes you through the 7 steps in detail as to how to effectively prospect leveraging your credibility introduction. And again, just reach out, send me an email, and we can go from there. Okay, so creating your credibility introduction, how do we do that? What do those set of executive ears that I'm trying to gain attention? And I'm trying to gain attention, and they've already got way too many items on their plate. They're very busy, and here I am trying to capture their attention. And if I'm prospecting, odds are they don't know me. They don't know who my company is, perhaps. So I've got to make sure that I get this just right so I do capture their attention. And as we talked about earlier, I only get one chance to make a good first impression, so I want to make sure I get it exactly right, and we'll talk how to do that. But what those executive ears want to hear is that whatever I'm trying to reach out to them to discuss is something that I've done before, and I did it in a way that differentiated me, so there's something unique about what my company does, product and service I'm offering, and it should be of interest to them because I've done my homework so I know who I'm targeting, right? And what the reward was for whoever I did it for. So in value selling terms, we would say I want to make sure that I describe a good problem or a large challenge they had, what was the unique capability that I leveraged to solve it, and what was the value or the financial impact to my client's P&L that made it worth their while to do business with me. We know based on our 2 decades of experience, this is what executive ears want to hear on that initial introduction, and it gets a little tougher, right? We talked a second ago that I've only got 30 seconds to be able to do that. And the 30 seconds, whether it's on the phone, in person if I meet them before having their agreement to a meeting, bump into them, see them at a trade show, what have you, or I'm sending an email, it needs to be that same 30-second time to read in length as well. So let's talk about how we actually build these. Okay, so the 30-second credibility introduction is going to include this: who we are and what we do. I'm Doug Von Koenig from Value Selling Associates. That you solved a business challenge for an organization similar to mine, so it needs to resonate with them. And we'll talk a little bit more a little later in the webinar about making sure I tune the example that I'm going to give to something that will resonate with them. So if I've done something, just as an example, if I've done something and solved something uniquely that brought a lot of value, let's say to an automotive company, and I'm talking to a hospital as my next prospect, that what I've done for that automotive company is not going to resonate necessarily with that hospital. So I would want to make sure I stay within the vertical and give them an example of a company that they might associate with, some other healthcare organization, maybe a vendor to healthcare organizations, etc. And then I want to make sure I talk about what was unique about how I solved that particular challenge and what value did they receive from it. So what was the financial impact that they received from leveraging my unique capabilities when I solved that problem for them. And Again, that sounds like a lot of content, and we need to make it pretty focused, and I've got to deliver it in 30 seconds or less to gain their attention, or I just bounce off the view of, they look at it as a spam. So hopefully that's making sense so far. So if I applied this to me as a partner at ValueSelling Associates, who and what? Doug Von Koenig, I'm a partner with ValueSelling Associates, and what do? We accelerate business results. A challenge I've solved for another company, so I happen to pick an IT example for today. If I were talking to another company in the IT industry, this would be appropriate. I'll follow my own example. If I was talking to an automotive manufacturer that was trying to speed up some part of their business process, that may not be the best example. I would look for an example that I could tie that would be closer to them, resonate with them better. But in this case, I'm using an IT example referencing one of our accounts, and the challenge we solved for them was they were a major networking provider. I may not have permission to use their name, but that's okay. I reduced stalled sales while also growing their pipeline 3x. That's what I did for them. That's the big challenge I solved. And what was unique about it? Well, we've got a unique single-page road mapping tool set that leverages purposeful probing questions. And in our markets, that is a unique characteristic of value selling. So I want to make sure they understand that I've got something that nobody else has. That's how the unique part gets in there. And then what was the value that we provided them? And again, stalled sales reduced by 30%, so there's a metrics, right? Sales reduced it by 30%, and also at the same time grew their qualified pipeline by 3x within the first year. So I'm providing them, that's the content of the information. That's not said in a nice paragraph that'll fit 30 seconds, but that's my next step. But I'm going to do one thing. Let me just check and see if there's any questions. I see a couple of good ones here. The one I'm going to pick is, Doug, what's so important about the 30 seconds? Why can't it be a minute? Well, a good question, and thanks for asking it. I will tell you that our experience says, and we test this all the time, all the people we train, companies we work with, etc., we know that after 30 seconds that executive starts tuning out if it gets too wordy, because we tend to be just taking too long to get to the point. They've got a very short attention span usually because of how busy they are, and we're just really regimented on that first introduction. Again, I've got one chance to make a good first impression. If they see a 2-page or a 2-minute or just a really long email or a really long voicemail that just kind of wanders, they're going to lose attention really quick, because it's going to, if I'm leaving a voicemail or an email that way, the logic they think of is, well, that's going to be the same way they talk and deal with me, and that's too much time. I don't have the time for it, et cetera, et cetera. So best to do it within 30 seconds or less. It can be a little shorter. Might as well use the full 30 seconds, but we're pretty convinced that that's as much time as they give us. And we also ask our executives from our clients, what works really well, and that 30 seconds comes up all the time. So make it quick, make it to the point, don't waste my time. Cool. Okay, and one more question while we're asking questions. I got another good one here. Thanks for asking it. What about if I'm doing this on, if I'm not calling them, or if I'm doing an email, do I have to follow the same 30-second rule? And the answer is yes, for the same reasons we just talked about. Whether you're starting, some people, I actually like to do both simultaneously. We'll talk about that when we get to the prospecting piece. But I actually like to make sure I send an email and I leave a voicemail with the same information. And the reason I script it out is, have you ever been in a situation, well, let's say you like to call first, and everybody's so busy, we generally get voicemail when we call executives, but you're doing a good thing, you're trying it early on a Friday morning, what have you. What happens if they answer the phone and you're surprised by that? You might take a gulp and say something like, oh, geez, I didn't expect you to answer the phone. I was going to leave you a voicemail. And you've got one chance to make a good first impression, and you just blew it. So I highly recommend scripting this out. And even though I've been doing this for 10 years, I have my script in front of me, and I read it. because that 30-second rule is always at play. That's the assumption I've got to make and what I've got to plan for. And if they answer the phone, I just read it. It's written by me. It sounds like me. They don't know that I'm reading it from a short script. And if I'm leaving a voicemail, I want to make sure I'm succinct and to the point as well. So highly recommend, after you build these out, that you always have them in front of you when you're following up by phone. We'll talk about that a little bit more in details. But script it, have your notes in front of you, read it off your script. You built it, so it sounds like you. And that's a best practice. But yes, whether you're doing it on email, whether you're doing it on phone call first, it's got to be the same 30-second or shortness. And again, thanks for asking the questions. I'll come back in a little bit. Those look like two really good ones. And waiting here for a second. Let's see, I did something. My screen's not advancing. Minor technical problem, folks. Okay, there we go. So here's how, sorry about that. So here's how I take that content that I just crafted out, and here's how it sounds. And time me if you will, but I can say this in less than 30 seconds at my normal rate of speech. My name's Doug Von Koenig. I'm a partner with ValueSelling Associates. We specialize in accelerating business results. My office phone is 269-428-8269. I'd like to discuss how our unique single-page roadmap toolset, enabled with purposeful probing questions, helped XYZ company accelerate sales by reducing their stalled sales 30%, while also growing their qualified pipeline 3x within 1 year. Okay, so I was just able to say that credibility introduction in less than 30 seconds. It should be interesting to them if they too have a similar challenge or problem that we solve for XYZ company. And then I just like to add, if I'm leaving a voicemail first, I like to add that I'll follow up with an email to schedule time with you. Thank you in advance for your time. And then just one of those tips, when I follow up with the email, I just tell them right in the beginning, you know, I just left you a voicemail. If you hear that first, please ignore this email. And that just tends to seem to help the increase rate for people coming back to me, just being courteous that I didn't hit them in both places, the voicemail and the email, and I let them know that. So again, able to say that in less than 30 seconds, kept it real focused. If I was not reading this off my notes, I may wander with it, get stuck, I get distracted, something else happens, and I turn this thing into a 45-minute voicemail. They're not going to respond to it, and it literally is the seconds matter. So again, I'm just stressing the importance of that 30 seconds and test it out, and then this would be exactly, so another question just being asked is, well, what would be the email content? Great question, and thanks for asking it. It would be exactly the same content. So the way I actually do it personally is I like to send the email first, and then I will put at the bottom that I'll follow up with, I'll call you in a couple days to schedule time with you. If you don't have a chance to respond to this email by then, thanks in advance for your time. So they set that expectation a little bit that the call is coming, or the call is coming, I'm following up to an email, and when they get the voicemail the second time, at least I've told them it's coming, and then I'll also follow up again and resend the email. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, but very focused way of making sure I'm trying to get through all the other things clamoring for their attention. And again, content is important. It's got to be a credibility introduction that's got the components we talked about, that I solved a big problem for a client, that there's for another company that they're going to resonate with, definitely from their same industry. What was the unique characteristic I used to solve that problem, and what was the value, the financial reward that that client received. And just want to make sure I'm always doing that all the time. Okay, so just a quick recap. The 30-second version is for us to gain access. That's the initial contact. And then I also want to make sure bear with me a second. My screen is not advancing like I think it should. Okay, and then the 30-second version to gain the initial access, and then I can leverage that same content in my 2-minute version and to really anchor my credibility that I've got good things to say, they're going to be valuable to them, and you want to continue paying attention to me with the respect I deserve based on what I did for this other client. So the neat thing is that I can take what I did in the 30-second version and I can leverage it in my 2-minute version, and then I'm going to expand it. And one of the tips is this. The 30-second version has to be, so let's say the scenario is I called somebody, got them on the phone, I've got my script in front of me so I'm not surprised. The 30-second version needs to be the first 30 seconds of the conversation. So, I call somebody, they answer the phone, I greet them, and I read at my normal voice pace, rate of speech, I read them the credibility introduction and then ask them if I can get time on their calendar. And if we get chit-chatty after that, that's okay. But on the first contact, it's got to be me on the first 30 seconds, and that's critical. We start talking about things, and I don't get a chance to do my credibility introduction. They've already tuned out, and I've lost the opportunity. So stressing that on the first contact, I've got to have that first 30 seconds ready to go, and I've got to just go with the credibility introduction before I let them start talking a lot. Not true on the 2-minute meeting. On the 2-minute credibility introduction, to anchor it, I want to make this the first 2 minutes of my speak time. So I can be a little more chatty. They already wanted to listen to me because of the 30-second version that got me in, and now I'm leveraging this to make sure that the first 2 minutes of my speak time during the face-to-face meeting, or if I'm doing another phone call with them, I can let them chat, talk a few things that's going on, and I just want to make sure I go through my 2-minute version in the first 2 minutes that I get to speak during the call. Okay? So let's look at an example of expanding this out. So the content is similar. I'm using a slightly different example, but similar. So, thanks for taking the time to meet me today. I'd like to spend the majority of my time learning about your business. Again, a value-based process for leading a sales cycle requires me to be asking about the question, learning their business. Let's tee that up and set the expectation, your initiatives and what gets in the way of accomplishing them. But before we do that, how much do you know about value selling, or in your case, your company? And let me just take a minute to tell you what we've done for other companies in the industry. And again, this doesn't have to be the first 2 minutes of the conversation in total, just my first 2 minutes when I get to speak. Okay, so we're in the business of helping companies methodically accelerate their business by shortening sales cycles and improving margins. More specifically, these results come from leveraging our single-page, probing question-based roadmap toolset that enables sales and marketing teams to work smarter and improve efficiency by at least 30%. I already mentioned in my earlier contact with you that XYZ, so now I'm just back referencing the what a content I used in my 30-second credibility introduction. I already mentioned that XYZ company reduced their stalled sales by 30% while also growing their pipeline 3x, and the company leveraged ValueSelling to launch their, so hang on a second, I got to minimize this. Within the first year, ABC company leveraged ValueSelling to launch their enterprise business and realized a 23% attach rate within the first 6 months. So what I did there, because I've got more time, I really want to anchor the credibility. I just added a second set of content around what I solved for somebody, how I did it, and the value they got in return, the financial impact. So just add in, that's the best practice tip, just add in that second reference story, if you will, focused in the credibility introduction format, and then you can continue on. Pausing while the screen updates. Hang on a second, please. Okay, sorry about that. I'd like to better understand if we have a similar opportunity for improvement here at your company. And again, this is just teeing up the part to head us into a value-based conversation, start to understand what problems they have that we can best solve. So could you tell me a little bit more about the company's goals for 2013, or 2014 in this case, and what you personally have to do to contribute to this? Or you could say what stands in the way of contributing to these goals, or what you're expected to do to contribute to these goals. And if you're a value selling client using a value prompter, you'll recognize this, teeing it up as the start of the value prompter-based sales discussion. And again, just want to, I'm teeing it up and heading that customer to the, let's start talking about what problems you're trying to solve that my company may be in the best position to help you resolve. And hopefully we can tie it back to the financial improvement that should be expected from that. But that's moving into the sales cycle. But this way, I'm reinforcing the information that got me the appointment or got me in the door for the next discussion. And I just want to take the time to go through and really anchor that firmly when I have the second conversation with them, whether it's face-to-face, over the phone, same process, so that I've really anchored the fact that I can solve things for them in a big way, and that other companies have gotten valuable rewards for that and drive the process. Okay, so let's talk about adapting this to both sales and marketing. And again, this is the content that we talk about, who you are and what you do, that you've solved a business challenge for an organization similar to mine, what was unique about how you solved it, and what value did they receive from it. So those are the 4 pieces of information that you need to include in every credibility introduction. For a sales team, the key part is to make sure that you are adapting it for each of the different type of verticals you may sell to. That's back to my conversation that an automotive company, for instance, it's not going to resonate with them probably if I use a hospital as an example, but if I can use an automotive supplier as an example, or some other automotive connected or industry similar to that example, it's going to resonate with them because it's got to be similar to what they do from a company standpoint. Same thing, so from a sales standpoint, if I sell into 8 different vertical markets and they're very different than each other, I would actually want to tee up 8 different credibility introductions and then just leverage them accordingly to make sure that I'm in alignment with something that resonates with the person I'm saying it to. And again, just that stretch from an auto company to a hospital is probably too great. I want something that would connect or resonate with an automotive company, and then separately I would want something that would resonate or connect with a hospital. And go from there. So from a sales standpoint, the way I adapt this is just make sure I have the right library of credibility introductions for the correct different types of companies I may deal with. And so I've got a little bit of a library, and I just use them accordingly. Pretty straightforward. And then from a marketing standpoint, so let's talk about, from a marketing standpoint, it's pretty much the same. I'm going to follow the same process. I'm going to follow the same structure. But what I'm going to do differently is I'm going to leverage the same type of credibility process as I build out my campaigns, as I build out my marketing collateral, as I build out introductions. So the best practice advice I always give my clients is keep the presentation decks you have. Just make sure that you've enabled a good credibility introduction about your company for the customer type that your sales team is going to leverage that marketing deck with, or what other piece of collateral may be. Just make sure you've got the credibility introduction as the introduction, because we've got to follow that same 30-second rule. Nice thing in marketing is you get to generally adapt both of these. So if I was a marketing professional, I would use both the 30-second and the 2-minute versions in the same. I could easily do that in the same document or same piece. I just want to kind of highlight the 30-second version up front to make sure I gain attention so they'll actually read the rest of my document and be interested enough to go through it. So marketing team, sales team, same application. I just want to make sure I'm driving that process based on the components we talked about. And in a marketing version, I can use both of them at the same time, but just make sure I might put a block around the 30-second version or just have it stand out some way up top early in the document so that I'm capturing that attention of the person that I'm trying to get to read it. So pretty straightforward, but we get to leverage it on both sides, marketing and sales, so we're both driving the process the same way. Okay, so now I'll just pause and check and see if we've got any questions. Okay, yep, so here's a question, and it's from a marketing professional on the phone. So, Doug, is the offer to review our collateral or review our credibility or something? We're also a marketing person. Absolutely. If you would like me to help you figure out how to do it right, tune it, take a look at what you've done, I'd be happy to do that. So same, yeah, I'm not discriminating. If you're a sales professional, if you're a marketing professional, if you're on this phone call, I would be happy to help you. Just send an email to me, and I will work with you to get that done. Again, that's on a complimentary basis. Value selling drives the prospecting and the credibility process really hard, and we like doing it, so happy to help you out. Good question. Thanks for asking. So prospecting, right? Usually we're not horribly excited about prospecting, and the feedback I get from my clients all the time as to why don't you prospect more generally boils down to we're not sure how to do it, and I'm tired of spending a lot of time doing it and not getting a lot of results. Makes sense. I've been there, done that, lived that myself in the past. So let's change that. Let's make it that I have a process that actually works for me, and it can drive results for me. And what I'm going to share with you now are just the effective prospecting steps that value selling uses, but we absolutely leverage our 30-second credibility introductions to do this. So again, I'm not doing a deep dive on this today, but that's a separate webinar, but I will absolutely send you the deck. That's about 10 slides that explains how to do each of these things, and it's absolutely the same process that we at Value Selling and I personally follow to be able to make this work really well. So obviously the first step is, and we wrote this at a kind of a 101 level, so it's taking you right from I've never prospected before, how do I do this well, identify who to call, do some research about them up front and the company, so we know, I've got to know which type of credibility introduction I want to send to them based on what market, the type of things they're doing, what have you. Our process recommends that, cold calling is very ineffective if I just send an email or call somebody that I have no connection to whatsoever. That's probably the least effective way of going after prospecting. What I want to do instead, and LinkedIn and the other social media tools are awesome for this, is I want to locate a warm referral person. So somebody inside their domain, if it's got a .com, the same extent, if I've got a friend inside the company, if I've got on LinkedIn a friend of a friend, somebody that wants to they'll forward the email that I want to send to the senior decision maker, having it come from a domain that the senior decision maker recognizes takes the acceptance rate and the likelihood that they'll see it or read it probably up by about 80%. It's literally, we watch a lot of statistics on this stuff. So I could send a bunch of emails, but if I don't have that target person who's also going to forward it for me, so it comes in from a domain they recognize, I can increase my effectiveness by 80%. The other way, just sending it on my own, generally does not work, and my personal view is it's a waste of time. So I want to take the time to locate the warm referral person. Then I actually send the 30-second credibility introduction, have my referral person forward it as well, and then I'll follow up to the email with a phone call like we talked about before. I'll tee that up in the email that, hey, I'm going to call you in a few days if you hadn't had a chance to respond. Actually follow up with the phone call, leave the voicemail, and again, I'm going to read that right off my 30-second credibility introduction so that I sound very cohesive, I sound very consistent, and I'm always saying things that should be of interest to that senior decision maker, and do that all the time. So if no response, then I follow up again the following week, and we talk about some things about how to leverage the executive assistants. Call them up. Usually you can get their contact information pretty easily through the switchboard, or look it up online. At their website might have it, but you can get that pretty good. And call up the admin and find out, hey, did this email come into your boss? Here's what I'm trying to help him or her do. and you also read the credibility introduction at that point, because that's why you're trying to help their boss. We know from years of studies about personality traits and some other things that when you use the word help a lot, it really empowers that admin to want to go the extra distance with you. And we talk about the finer points of that. Again, this is in the deck I'll send you if you want it. Turning the wrong call into the right call. So I actually got into somebody. Turns out they don't have that job function anymore. How do I take all that effort that I put in there and make sure I get something in return? Well, turn them into the warm referral person. And instead of just getting the name and the contact information of the correct person that you should be speaking with, have them actually refer the email for you to the right person. Again, we know that if it comes from inside the domain, it gets looked at generally, but we also know the flip side is true. If it just comes in off the street, normally those don't go anywhere. So definitely opportunity, wrong call, turn into the right call, details behind that, and then just proceed with the discovery call. So this is the just a quick overview of the 7-step process that we use at ValueSelling. Again, we've got a nice short deck put together on this. Send me an email when we're done with this. I'll be happy to forward it to you, and we'll go from there. Yeah, apologize. I've got just a minor thing where I'm not advancing the slide the way I want to. Bear with me a second, guys. I'm almost there. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm just checking for any questions. I already touched on a couple of them. Yep, and somebody's asking about how do they get more information on the prospecting piece. Again, if you'll send me an email, I'll have a slide up at the end of this that it's got my email address on it. I will send you that presentation and offer to take you through it with a better explanation. Again, complimentary basis. Talked about that. The next, so I'm pretty much done, and I'm checking for questions, and I don't see any others just yet. So awesome. Again, if you think of them later, shoot me an email. I'll answer them for you. Just putting in a plug for our next webinar. One of my colleagues, Scott Anschutz, great guy, is going to run our webinar on March 11th, which is Qualifying Prospects, a Formulas for Success. Again, he's got a nice pile of best practices he's going to share on that webinar. So I'd highly recommend you tune into that. We've got a lot of value selling related information available at very reasonable prices on our e-store at ValueSelling. So just valueselling.com, and then there's a tab at the top for the e-store. And we'd love you to give feedback on this webinar in the easiest way you want to follow us. So we're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn, of course, and there's groups for us on both of those organizations. And again, shoot me an email, and I'll be happy to help you on your credibility introduction as well as the prospecting piece if you'd like me to. And with that, I just want to thank you for your time today. And again, I'm going to leave my email address up on the screen for a while, but thank you so much for your attention. Hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a great selling day.